In this second chapter of a 1-2 slow food punch, we'll continue to explore some villages and learn about slow food along the journey. Try and fail to stretch some noodles by hand.
Not too bad for a first try, I think.
Sip on some wonderfully bitter home-brewed ale. Check out a farmer's house and pluck some fruit right off the vine.
It's like the softest and sweetest walnut that I've ever had.
All of that and more on this Wok and Roll. In the last episode, we grinded up some corn via donkey power. I nibbled on some trout that was anything but fishy. And then I walked around, and I was drawn to the local village of Beijingers by some loud tunes being belted out by the townspeople. There, I found an old farmhouse that was converted into a restaurant that was cranking out some noodles the slow food way. Xiaolumian, which means northern-style noodles, is situated in an old farmhouse that's been converted into a noodle-singing restaurant. These hand-pulled noodles are made on-site, and they're what brings the customers all the way in from the center of Beijing. In the courtyard of the restaurant, I saw the master pulling noodles out in front of a crowd of people.
Just like this, young. I think it's such a cool scene right here, just like standing in the middle of this like Chinese countryside.
To make these noodles, a simple dough of flour and water is stirred up and folded over again and again to achieve just the right level of stretch. Then it's rolled out into a long, thin sheet that's a bit bigger than your average sheet of paper.
Huh? It's like small little strips.这样啊，比较容易。这个起码比较大。So this is the first time I've ever made noodles entirely by hand. I mean, I've done it like mixing, the flour, making your own dough and stuff like that. But usually the final process is using a pasta machine, sending it back and forth, and that cuts it up. This is the first time I've ever actually done it by hand.
From here, it's cut into strips. Grab each end of the strip and begin to bounce it up and down against the table as you carefully pull your hands apart.
So here's you got the standard little strip right here that we just cut. And then what you want to do is basically bounce it. As you're bouncing, you're kind of turning your fingers a bit. At least that's my understanding of it. I'm sure I'm not doing it. Hi, Sheen. A little long noodle right there. Not too bad for a first try, I think.
My noodle pulling compatriot was working on an orange-colored dough, which looked much more visually appealing than my plain Jane off-white variety. When I asked her about her different hued noodles, she said she worked a little bit of carrot into the dough. Somehow, this simple task is beyond me.
Well, it's definitely fun learning to make noodles the old-fashioned way. I mean, I'm definitely a big fan of pasta, so it's kind of cool to get to know the process of doing it the old-school way, the slow food way. But unfortunately, the little things that I've done right here are not really up to snuff. So I guess we got to start over, and not acceptable, she said. Booyah. So back to the beginning.
Noodles often prove a worthy adversary for someone who hasn't been using chopsticks their whole life. Some Westerners here end up resorting to some hand techniques to put these noodles down. After getting a solidly epic fail at my attempt of noodle stretching, a walk in the countryside sounded just about right to do some foodie soul searching. I came upon a farmer's house that was chock-a-block with vegetable varieties, so I had to check it out.
What I think is cool about like little Chinese farms like this is how on such a tiny little plot of land they're able to plant so many things. I've already just walked in the door, and back there I saw some leeks, here's some grapes, over there some cabbage. So they squeeze so many things onto such tiny plots of land. I think it's cool. Hopefully this farm dog's not going to get angry at me. Good, no problems.
In the US of A, when people think about farmhouses, the classic image of a lone home sitting by itself on the prairie, surrounded by massive fields, comes to mind. But here, on this side of the world, farmers' abodes are quite the other thing. Generally, they're in small villages of courtyard-style homes, which are centered around a small plot of land that grows a massive selection for such a minuscule area.
Back here, got some walnuts drying out. And you can see over here they kind of pick them out.
Once the walnuts have been harvested from the tree, they are tossed onto some tarps to dry in the sun for a few days. Since this is the real country, not some fancy pants country club, you gotta do stuff for yourself around these parts.
Wow. It's like the softest and sweetest walnut that I've ever had. You know, like most walnuts that I've had in my life, you know, come from a little, like, kind of like pop-top jar from the store. They've probably been picked and sitting there for a couple months. I've never had them like fresh, you know, picked right from the field, drying at the farmer's house. Like, this is the kind of stuff I love about the slow food movement, you know? Just like having a connection to the land, you know, coming to a place like this, you can see where it all comes from, see the connections. And a lot of these crops, they kind of like growing one helps the other. So it's a very different like food system than in the United States, where it's massive farms. They pretty much just grow one or two things, usually corn or soy or something like that.
After snooping around the property a bit, I heard a sound from behind, and it turned out to be one of the people who lived at the house.
Thank you very much for letting me look around your farm, your garden. It's very beautiful.
Now, if you were in the US, walking around a farmer's property without his permission, you'd likely end up getting greeted by the barrel end of a shotgun. But here, luckily, I found a friendly but shy country guy.
So you use the wood for this?
就是把这个放在里面。
So you put it inside there?
然后用那个。
Light it up.
In the back of the kitchen was a multi-purpose stove and heater for the house called a kang. Back in the day, people would build a fire inside of these and sleep on beds that were connected to the stove to get at all that heat.
So basically, like most of the stuff, I mean, like about half the stuff that they eat comes from the garden right out there. So he knows where it comes from. This is like definitely kind of like part of the slow food movement, but not in the same sense, you know, in the United States where people are trying to change things. This is just the way things have been for such a long time. You know, people grow their own food, so you don't have to worry about price increases, and just they can just do it themselves.
He was a very welcoming fellow and showed me all around his house and his garden, where he grew almost everything imaginable.
That must be at least a solid 20, 30 pounds right there. It's definitely one of the biggest vegetables I've ever seen. They call it a donggua, which means winter melon. This is one of the melons that we don't really have in the United States, or I really haven't seen too much of. Because I've seen this before in some Chinese supermarkets, and I was like, why are they coating it with chalk or something like that? But he's saying that's just the way that they grow. So on the outside, there's kind of powdery white kind of substance, and inside, like kind of like once it's cooked, it has a very soft, kind of mellow flavor. It's definitely one of the biggest melons I've ever seen.
In the middle, there was a set of stairs that descended down to a root cellar that in the days before refrigeration was used to keep veggies during the long, cold winter months.
这个是什么样的梨？
这个是有点酸。
So this is one of the more sour pears that they have. Face dripping goodness. I've had a great time seeing where some of the tasty eats that I've tried come from. So thank you very much. I've had a great time. Just yeah.
After a long day of trekking around and lots of feasting, a strong drink seemed in order. Luckily back at the HQ of the fest, a local brewery was pouring up teaser cups of their wicked ale. Greek Leap Brewing was recently opened by a fellow Ohioan, Carl.
I didn't actually even get interested in beer at all until I was in my early 20s. And so, like a good law-abiding American.
Yeah, of course.
But I didn't actually make any beer until I moved to Beijing, because my wife and I had the idea that it would be good to do like a craft brewery, a microbrewery in China. But you know, we juggled around the idea of trying to recruit a brewmaster to move here, and then we thought of the nightmare that would be if he didn't speak Chinese and he didn't like it here or whatever. So I basically just took 6 months and taught myself how to brew like really basic beers.
So do you start kind of like reading books or online? Like what was your
I mean, I have books that I've never read.
Yeah.
Because I mean, brewing's one of those things that it's all trial and error.
Yeah, definitely.
And so it's actually just, you know, you get in your kitchen, you get in your operation room space, and you just make mistakes until you get it right. So a little bit different than a lot of other hobbies.
Like, which would you say is like hoppier or stronger?
The Little General is both higher in alcohol content and is more bitter.
I think, can I have a glass of that, please?
You can. I will give you a plastic cup though.
Sounds perfect.
Save the environment, the soap.
Look at that beautiful golden color right there. Now what this beer is nothing but pure hops and flavor. It has a lot of malt and hops. Now, if you're used to your whole life just drinking, light lagers and things like that, this would be a favor smack to the face. This stuff is delicious. This is the kind of beer that Dreams is made of. And especially the fact that you can get it here in Beijing where nowhere else it's available. Compared is spot on. Cheers. So I have to say today has been a pretty good day. I've got to meet some interesting folks, learn some more about the farm to table movement, and also eat some delicious fruit right off the vine. I was hoping to see the sunset over the Great Wall today, but it looks like the rain clouds are coming in, so I guess it's time to get back to Beijing and back to the fast-paced life. So see you next time here on Wok and Roll.
Next episode, I'm gonna go ethnic chic and check out a place serving up Southern delights. Nibble on some weird things that I've never considered food.
I've tried a lot of things in my life, but bugs has not been one of them. I feel like if I'm going to try it, you have to do it as well.
Chat it up with a pretty lady and learn about this exotic province. Put down glass after glass of some sickly sweet local drink. All that and more on next Wok and Roll.